They sold her for less than the price of a bottle of whiskey. It was the brutal winter of 1874, in a lawless mining camp called Broken Ridge. A woman was dragged onto a makeshift wooden stage. A filthy burlap sack was tied tight over her head, shutting out the world. The crowd laughed as if it were a show staged just for their amusement. Mud splattered her dress. Someone hurled a rock. Men shouted cruel jokes, broken goods, useless, not worth feeding. But one man did not laugh. Silas Blackwood stood at the edge of the crowd, tall, silent, his heavy fur coat dusted with snow. It hadn't spoken to another soul in 6 months. It lived alone high in the Bitterroot Mountains, far from people, far from noise, far from memories. It had come down only for supplies, salt, ammunition, flour, nothing more. Then he saw her hands. They shook, not just from the cold, but from pure terror. That kind of fear, Silas recognized all too well. The wind howled through Broken Ridge like a dying animal, carrying the stench of sweat, smoke, and unwashed bodies. The camp was nothing but leaning shacks and sagging tents pressed against the mountainside, as if afraid to tumble away. Hope didn't live in places like this. It came here to die. Silas adjusted his pack and turned to walk away. Then the crack of a whip split the air. "Step right up, gentlemen. Don't be shy." The slick voice belonged to Cyrus Snake Kaliwa, a drifter with greasy hair and a reputation that spread like oil. He stood on an overturned crate, grinning at the crowd. Beside him, the woman stood trembling in a thin gray dress that did nothing against the cold, wrists bound. "What you got there, Snake? A dog or a woman?" a miner shouted. Laughter tore through the crowd. "Little of both," Calloway sneered. "Found her wandering near Deadwood. No name, no family. Won't they speak a word? Damn as a fence post." "Why the sack?" another yelled. "Trust me, you don't want to see what's under there. Face looks like it lost a fight with a wildcat. Ugly as sin, but strong hands. Stieye work. Who starts the bidding at $5? Silence. $5 was too much for a woman Calloway called ruined. Even lonely men had limits. "I wouldn't pay $2, someone scoffed. The woman flinched, a small movement, but Silas caught it. Her shoulders tightened. Her hands clenched. She wasn't just cold. She was being crushed. "All right," Calloway snapped, grabbing her arm and shaking her. $3. No answer. Men began drifting away, bored. "Fine," Calloway spat. $1 silver, or I leave her tied to a tree for the wolves." Something broke inside Silas. He wasn't a hero. It was a man who wanted peace, quiet, and to be left alone. But he knew what it meant to be thrown away like trash. He knew what it felt like to be treated as less than human. The woman stood still now, as if she'd already accepted death. "I'll take her." The voice was deep, steady, and dangerous. The crowd turned. Silas stepped forward, massive, broad-shouldered, iron-beard, eyes hardened by loss. He pulled his last $silver from his pocket, the only thing he had left for the winter. It slapped onto a barrel. Calloway's grin flashed back. "Sold." He tossed the rope to Silas. "She's your problem now. Don't say I didn't warn you." Silas didn't respond. He stepped close, blocking the wind with his body. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's get you out of this mud." The crowd mocked him as he led her away. He ignored them. The journey up the mountain was slow and brutal. Snow fell hard an hour after leaving Broken Ridge. Silas walked ahead, leading his mule, the woman rode. He wrapped his spare blanket around her shoulders. She never spoke, never thanked him, just breathed fast inside the sack. 4 hours later, they reached his cabin. A sturdy log structure built into the cliffside, surrounded by pines. Darkness had fallen. Silas helped her down. Her legs buckled, he caught her. She was light, too light. Inside, the fire was dead, the air frozen. Silas sat her by the hearth and lit the flames. Only then did he turn to her. The sack still covered her head. He drew his knife. She recoiled, shaking violently. Easy, he said. I'm not hurting you. He cut the rope at her neck and gently pulled the sack away. His breath caught. No scars. No disfigurement. Her face was striking, almost unreal, pale beneath the dirt. One eye bruised and swollen, lips split. But beneath the injuries was a beauty that stopped time. Her eyes were violet, sharp, intelligent, afraid. She studied him closely. He lied, she whispered. Her voice was soft, educated, nothing like he'd expected. Who are you? Silas asked. She swallowed, straightened her back. My name is Adeline Sterling, she said. And I have just killed the governor of Wyoming. The fire cracked loudly. Silas stared. He knew that name. Every territory did. Wanted posters. Saloon whispers. A woman accused of poisoning her husband and murdering the governor in cold blood. $5,000 bounty, a dead or alive. Silas had bought her for $1. Pause for dramatic music swell. You're the most wanted woman in the territory, Silas said finally, voice low. Men hang for less than hiding you. I know, Adeline replied, violet eyes unwavering. But I didn't kill him. Silas studied her. He'd seen liars beg and scream. She wasn't begging. She was furious. You better start talking, he said, pulling a chair closer. And don't leave out a single word. Adeline's hands shook as cold and fear caught up. Silas ladled steaming venison stew into a bowl, set it before her with bread. Eat. You won't last long without it. She ate like someone starving. Laddie's manners warring with animal hunger. Silas watched. When the bowl was empty, she wiped her mouth. The governor was my godfather, she began. He raised me after my parents died. His name was Mitchell. He wasn't a good man, but he was an honest one. Silas nodded once. My husband, Bogard Sterling, wanted his land. Gold lay beneath tribal territory. The governor refused to sign. Refused to break the peace. She passed, blanket trailing. At a gala, my husband poured the wine. Handed me the glass. He handed it to my uncle. He drank. 2 minutes later, he was dead. The arse fell. They planted the poison in my bag. Called me the Black Widow. The story wrote itself. How did you escape? Silas asked. My maid hid me in a laundry cart. He walked for days. Kaliwa found me near Deadwood. When he saw the posters, he sacked my head. Know if he turned me in, worse men would come. The Red Sash gang, Silas said. Adeline paled. Yes. Silas glanced at the snow-buried window. They'll come. They always do. He checked the rifle by the door. I don't like bullies. And I don't like poisoners. That night, he slept by the fire, rifle across his knees. Adeline slept in the back room, safe for the first time in weeks. Transition, bright morning light after the storm. For 2 days, they fell into an uneasy rhythm. Adeline scrubbed floors, mended clothes. Silas taught her to load a revolver. He never touched her without need, never looked at her like property. She watched him when he wasn't looking, the quiet strength, the sadness like a scar. On the 3rd morning, the axe's sound stopped abruptly. Silas burst in, face hard. Get in the cellar. Now. Stewbath. 10 minutes later, boots crunched outside. 3 men entered without knocking, lawmen in name only. Cold ice. One wore a red sash. We're looking for a woman. I live alone, Silas replied. They searched, threatened. They smelled lavender and fresh bread. Silas stood firm. They left. But he knew better. They'll wait. We leave tonight. They abandoned the mule, climbed the high pass under moonlight. Snow swallowed their tracks. The cold was merciless. By dawn, they reached the summit. Windscreen. Silas led them into an abandoned mine drift to rest. Why are you doing this? Adeline asked softly. Silas stared at the stone wall. I had a wife once. Men with money burned my house. De La laughed. He met her eyes. You don't run anymore. They descended into a narrow canyon called the Throat. Issa lined the walls. A frozen creek ran underfoot. A rifle cracked. Bullets shattered stone. They're on the ridge. Silas shouted. They ran, dug behind boulders as gunfire echoed. Silas fired back, dropping one. Anoter appeared behind. Silas drew his knife. The man screamed. A second shot rang out. Silas fell. Silas! Adeline screamed. Blood spread across the snow. She grabbed the rifle, fired. The outlaw dropped. Silas gasped, Fadim. She dragged him to a frozen waterfall, hid behind the ice. She pressed cloth to the wound. We have to burn it, he whispered. She did. Outside, a voice echoed. Adeline stepped out alone. She shattered the ice beneath the pursuer. It vanished into the freezing river. Silence returned. Adeline crawled back, wrapped herself around Silas, whispered until he breathed again. They weren't safe yet. But they were alive. The mountains didn't care who was innocent or guilty. They only cared who was strong enough to survive. Silas drifted in and out as Adeline dragged him through snow. His weight crushed her, but she refused to stop. She built a rough sled from pine branches and torn dress strips, pulled with everything left. Boots split by day 2, she wrapped her feet in cloth. She set snares, caught rabbits, melted snow for broth, fed him spoon by spoon. Stay with me, she whispered. You didn't save me just to die now. On the 4th day, the mountains opened. Below lay Silverton, smoke from chimneys, ringing bells, normal life. Adeline cried as she dragged the sled into town. People stirred. A ragged woman pulling a giant man in blood-soaked hides was unheard of. She collapsed before the sheriff's office. The door flew open. A man rushed out, face paling. Silas. Sheriff Tom Blackwood, his brother, dropped to his knees, checked for a pulse. He's alive. Get the doctor. It turned to Adeline. Who are you? She lifted her head, eyes burning. My name is Adeline Sterling. And I've come to collect a debt. Silas lived. The bullet missed his heart by inches. The cauterized wound saved him, though recovery was slow and painful. Adeline never left his side. 3 weeks later, the Silverton courthouse overflowed. People came from miles. They'd heard, the mountain man, the fugitive wife, the dollar that bought destiny. Bogart Sterling sat front and center. Clean, confident, untouchable. Silas stood at the back beside his brother, arm in sling, posture straight despite pain. Call the defendant. Adeline entered in a simple blue dress, black veil over her face. She walked to the stand without trembling. How do you plead? Not guilty, she said clearly. Bogart's lawyer sneered, unstable, hysterical, dangerous. Adeline lifted the veil. Gasps filled the room. She told the truth. Silas stepped forward, placed Calloway's ledger on the bench. Payment, names, proof. The jury didn't leave their seats. Guilty, the foreman said. Bogart screamed as he was dragged away. Outside, snow fell gently. You're free, Silas said quietly. Adeline looked at the town, the wealth waiting, the life she could reclaim. Then she looked at the mountains. She took out the battered silver dollar and pressed it into Silas's hand. "I want to buy something," she said softly. "What can you buy for $1?" he asked. "A partner," she replied. Silas closed his fingers around the coin.